evening and a warm welcome to State of Business on Art Television. I'm Hashain Ali and let's have a look at the headlines first. Crisis situation always teaches the world good lessons, State Minister Cabral stresses. Government lays down the rules and regulations for the vendors who target the tourists in the bubble. News in detail. State Minister of Money, Capital Markets and State Enterprise Reforms Ajit Niwad Cabral emphasizes that most of the good things in the world have been created as the result of any kind of crisis. State Minister Cabral made these observations addressing the inauguration of the 41st National Conference of Chartered Accountants, which was held in Colombo last evening.
Crisis always teaches us various lessons. If you look at the World War II, after the World War II, there was the IMF that was born, World Bank that was born, because these were the ways in which the redevelopment of the world could be financed. We found that after the 9/11, although we had suffered through terrorism for a long time, the world came to grips with terrorism, and they provided what is today known as the Anti-Money Laundering and Terrorism Financing Law, which today makes sure that many extreme funding organizations are put under pressure. Again, a good result from a bad occurrence. Then we found after the Sri Lankan financial crisis, fortunately we didn't have any banks crashing or finance companies crashing, but that gave us an opportunity to bring up the deposit insurance fund. We brought in reforms in our banking sector, where we had bank directors serving for 9-year periods, as well as retiring at 70. That tells us that even through crisis, we can come out and have some great experiences which can hold us in good stead.
President of CS Sri Lanka, Manil Jayasinghe stresses that Sri Lankans who experienced a 30-year-long civil war are easily adjustable to any challenging situations, and the COVID-19 pandemic was also transformed to a flight bringing their business to the next level. CS Sri Lanka President Jayasinghe said so addressing the 41st National Conference of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. Country is one of the biggest business summits. The National Conference of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka was held last evening in Colombo for the 41st successive year. The inauguration of National Conference was conducted via a virtual platform for the first time in its 4-decade-long history and due to conclude the 3 days even tomorrow. Organizers also claim that the technical sessions have been lined up with the participation of globally and locally acclaimed speakers and the panelists under the theme Abnormal Navigating Through Shattered Norms. Current skipper of the CS Sri Lanka, Manil Jayasinghe, invited all to be positive with the challenges as adapting and being innovative are the keys for success.
I think this pandemic has knocked us off our pedestal. Some might think it's bad, but I of course think it's good. I think it's high time we got knocked off and we start thinking differently. As you would have known, even during curfew time, a lot of businesses came up which you never knew were there. They displayed the agility to react to the situation and come out winners. And that is what I think we need to do. As a responsible professional body, CS Sri Lanka firmly believes that it is imperative for us to come forward to help navigate businesses through these uncharted times.
Central Bank announces that purchasing managers' indices for both manufacturing and services activities expanded in December 2020. The significant increase in production and new orders sub-indices, particularly in the manufacturer, food and beverages sector, has mainly contributed to the improvement in the overall index. Benefiting from the gradual normalizing of economic activities in the country, the manufacturing PMI continued to increase in December 2020 on a month-on-month basis, recording an index value of 61.2. This was mainly attributable to the increases observed in production, new orders, employment and stock of purchases sub-indices. The significant increase in production and new order sub-indices, particularly in the manufacture of food and beverages sector, has mainly contributed to the improvement in the overall index. Meanwhile, employment sub-index also increased during the month of December 2020. Some respondents in the manufacture of food and beverages and textile and wearing apparel sectors highlighted that they could better utilize employees amidst the improved factory operations with increased demand. The stock of purchases sub-index increased significantly in line with expansion in new orders and production, as well as with the intended accumulation of stocks anticipating supply chain disruptions in coming months, particularly due to upcoming Chinese New Year holidays. Further, the supplies delivery time sub-index lengthened at a slower pace in December. Many respondents mentioned that their shipments were rescheduled, causing considerable delays in arrival of clearance of required materials, mainly due to the continuous delays at the Port of Colombo. Expectations for manufacturing activities in the next 3 months improved further with the expectation for the normalization of economic activities within the country as well as in major export markets. Stay tuned for more news right after this commercial break. Welcome back after the break. Central Bank says it was holding its policy corridor at the current 4.5 to 5.5% amid negative forward premiums in forex markets and a steady drain on forex reserves. Central Bank said that the measures were taken to promote exports of goods and services are expected to buttress the external sector in 2021. CBSL in its report issued this morning announced that the board arrived at this decision after carefully considering the macroeconomic conditions and expected developments on the domestic and global fronts. The Monetary Board of the CBSL, having noted the reduction in overall market lending rates during 2020, stressed the need for a continued downward adjustment in lending rates to boost economic growth in the absence of demand-driven inflationary pressures, particularly considering the significant levels of excess liquidity prevailing in the domestic money market. As announced in November 2020, the board decided to introduce priority sector lending targets for the micro, small and medium-scale enterprises sector to support a broad-based economic revival in consultation with the banking community. However, the CBSL also added that although the COVID-19 marked a global economic disruption, the recent progress on vaccines has already brought a brightened economic outlook worldwide. The statement further says that the spread of COVID-19 weighed on Sri Lanka's growth prospects in 2020, but the outlook for 2021 remains positive. As per the GDP estimates published by the Department of Census and Statistics, the Sri Lankan economy, which contracted by 1.7% and 16.3% in the first and second quarters of 2020 respectively, rebounded in the third quarter of 2020 and recorded a growth of 1.5%. However, the onset of the second wave of COVID-19 is expected to have dampened the momentum in the fourth quarter of 2020. Accordingly, the economy is expected to have contracted by around 3.9% in 2020. Nevertheless, the economy is well poised to rebound in 2021, supported by the unprecedented policy stimulus measures introduced by the government and the central bank, improved domestic economic sentiments, alongside the improving prospects of the global economy. Tourism Minister Prasanna Ranatunga, who joined in the cabinet press briefing this morning, said that street vendors or vendors who are used to sell some items to tourists will not be allowed to enter the hotel premises within the tourism bubble introduced as a pilot project. Cabinet spokesman Minister Keheli Rambukwala said that if the vendors are ready to be in the bubble, they will be allowed to enter the selected hotels.
Especially beach hotels, how do you prevent vendors coming and accessing these people? Because these some of the vendors, also, obviously they have a practical problem. So how do you balance this?
No, that's the main thing that we have. We have appointed senior DIG for the tourism. We had a discussion with them because once we identify the hotels, if it's a beach side, we have given them chance to come. The vendors and them, they can't come near that area. So the police will look after that area and they are given the cover to us.
If the vendors are interested, they'll also have to go through the normal procedure that the tourist board has put into practice. So if they will not be left out, provided they are willing to come into the scheme.
then they have to wear that PP kit and that precaution they should take.
Yeah. Your point is right, because with the tourism, there are so many other connected areas where they are benefited. So those people should not be shut off, but giving them the opportunity, but to be within the cell or within the bubble, and also within the regulations that is stipulated by the Health Ministry.
General Partner of the BOE Capital, Prajit Balasubramaniam, says that most of the companies or the SMEs were failed due to the lack of funding. Experienced businessman Balasubramaniam suggests that the measures are needed to mitigate such occurrences in the future and praises the service of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce assisting in such occasions. The Ceylon Chamber of Commerce recently established the Council for Startups to address the key needs and challenges of SMEs and startups through allocation of a range of easily accessible opportunities, including access to over 40 international markets for various partnerships. Inaugurated in September 2020, the Council for Startups primarily aims to foster a thriving ecosystem of entrepreneurship which facilitates economic growth and empowerment of startups and SMEs in Sri Lanka.
You can't just build a product overnight. You need a lot of funding. That's the difference between a productized company and a services company. A services company, you don't need to actually bring in a lot of money because from day one, you start making money. But when you have product companies, which is what will create unicorns in India and other parts of the world, which we don't have. So one of the reasons a lot of these companies have failed over the COVID period is lack of funding. So that's why I've been talking to a lot of people out there, including venture capitals, including investment banks and angel investments, and also governments, to try and see if we can create different funds and create incubation programs where you can incubate and accelerate these productized companies, which is what is really required.
Stay tuned for SAC updates. Welcome back after the break. Trading at Colombo Stock Exchange ended on a mixed note today. The all-share price index dropped 113.69 points to close at 7,808.97, and the S&P SL20 gained 55.73 points to close at 3,059.03. The turnover was 11.4 billion rupees and over 690 million shares were traded. Up next are Forex rates. And that's all news for today. See you tomorrow with State of Business. Until then, take care and good night.